Right. Good morning, everybody. So before I do the opening, just some small tech remarks, just to note that this dialogue is being recorded. It's also being live streamed to our Facebook page, so it is a public dialogue. And in terms of protocol, please ensure that your name and surname is on your Zoom profile. If you do in the question and answer section come in and you'd like to ask a question, please also say your name and surname. Thank you so much. So good morning, and thank you for joining us at our dialogue, where we are focusing on this. It's a pre-election dialogue. Our elections are on Wednesday, and we're focusing on aspirations and perspectives of South Africa's youth regarding the type of leadership that our country needs and the nature of our coalition governments, should we be entering a coalition government after 29th of May. And so it's a great pleasure to welcome you to this dialogue, which SAILA is hosting in partnership with the Constitutionalism Fund, who's our development partner. And I think today is just a testimony to SAILA's commitment to upholding the values that we cherish as an organization. So upholding the Constitution, entrenching democracy in the country, other values like the rights of migrants and the LGBTQIA plus community as well, and then also platforming youth voices as well. So just to note that our dialogue focuses on this important theme and to platform youth representatives from political parties, youth activists, young academics, and members of civil society to engage in a very open and constructive conversation. And so we recognize it is election period, but let's keep it respectful and have constructive conversations on how to better entrench democracy and democratic values in our country. And so the speakers will be focusing on a few key topics. This includes qualities and values South African youth seek, or South Africa's youth seek in their leaders. As we approach elections, it's important to understand that what leadership traits resonates with our young population, and ensuring that our voices are heard and our aspirations reflected in the political landscape. So the role and impact of coalition governments in South Africa's future, we are treading towards a very uncharted territory in South Africa, having seen little pockets of coalition governments at a local level, but moving forward, we may see a coalition at a national level. What does this look like, and what does it mean for our country? It may become a reality in our political environment. And so it's important to explore the implications and how this can be harnessed to foster stability and progress. And then lastly, what are strategies for fostering inclusive and effective governance, and discussing developing strategies to ensure that all voices are heard, including those of the marginalized, and how marginalized voices elevated in decision-making processes. And so, in line with SAILA's mission to build consensus and facilitate dialogue, we believe that today's discussion will contribute significantly to shaping a democratic, inclusive, and prosperous country. So thank you for being here, and thank you for your continued support. And so let's begin this important dialogue in the spirit of mutual collaboration and respect, noting that all of our political ideologies might not be the same. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Fawzia, for those wonderful opening remarks. We also are very lucky to have a very diverse group of people from 7 different political organizations, that being the DA, the ANC, League, Rise Mzansi, Good, Build One South Africa First, and also the civil society group, Section 27. Now, it all speaks to the nature of our democracy. Without wasting any time, we're now going to call on Stabela from the DA to take the platform. The floor is now yours. Stabela, you may come in. Is Stabela still with us? Okay, that's all right. While Stabela is having technical issues, we're going to move on to the next person, which is Lucian Davis. You may come in, Lucian.
Hi, good morning. Just hold on, let me get my video. Okay, there we go. Good morning, everyone. I trust you all well. My name is Lucian Davids. I'm the provincial convener of the NC Youth League in the Western Cape province. And I would like to thank Salo for granting us the opportunity to obviously share our position on the three very important points. It is, 5 days before elections, the big day. And, I trust that we will all, be continuing to work hard towards for our respective political organizations. So to address the first question, right? What types of qualities and values should the leadership have, right? Or that the youth would want to see? For us, it's quite basic. Just 4 points that I would list there. It's transparency, honesty, dedication, and obviously action, because we need leaders that's going to execute. We need leaders that's going to, adhere to the call or listen to the call of the people to give them what they need. More broadly, on the issue of coalitions, our position, or especially from my sides, I can share, coalition should be avoided in as far as we possibly can, especially within the South African context. It is honestly not a viable conduit of even attempting to conduct good governance. The case of certain municipalities within the Western Cape as well as Johannesburg are quite a clear indication thereof. And more broadly, we deal with very large personalities in our political landscape, right? And not actually with organizations. So if we have a look at the contenders that we have in our political arena currently, we have the EFF with Julius Malema, we have
Sorry, you muted.
Sorry, I was muted by those, but I'm going to continue. We have MK Party and Zuma. We have the DA with John Steenhuisen, and we have PA with Gayton McKenzie, and all the other political parties that have really big personalities at the helm. So this invites a great difficulty in terms of coalitions, as it develops a sense of political incoherence, and that incoherence has been around for the longest time, actually. It is evident that that this incoherence, this political incoherence, is within the left wing, quite strongly so, and then even within the right wing, though to a lesser extent, because there is a level of cohesion and coherence amongst them when it comes to moving on similar policy positions and values. Beyond that, right, the incoherence can easily be indicated by the fact that within South Africa, we've reached a time in which there is a proliferation of political parties. This level of fragmentation of political power is quite alarming, to say the least. We have so many organizations in South Africa that have similar policy position and values that they entrench within their manifestos, within their constitutions. But we find that whenever a certain group splits from that organization, they rather go start a new one than finding, an organization that has their aspirations. So now, within the left more so, there's this unwillingness and or either this inability to collaborate on either political or economic policy positions and form a bloc on this basis because of that issue. And that is mainly what I think. It's an opinion of mine, but it is showing clear signs within our political landscape. More importantly, if we're also mindful of the current political context, in fact the international context that we are navigating, then we'd understand that should it come to the case of coalitions within South Africa, especially with the stronger party in our country would be the DA, that has a very large stake politically, then we'd understand we'd have a lot of difficulty with the projects that we have. In fact, many of them could be reversed, and these could be programs and projects and or government works such as the ICJ case to end the genocide in Palestine, the support of lifting the Cuban embargo, our economic bloc BRICS, and surely because racism and discrimination is so inherently tied into strongly right-wing organizations, it may also extend into the region. So that is our part on coalitions. And then on the approach of what we will strive to do for inclusion, to to have an inclusive government, the approach of the ANC has always been inclusive governance, as we have set up various institutions to make sure that each stakeholder in society has access to the levers of state, whether it is through Controlesa, through NEDLAC, through the Department of Social Development, and its role in supporting the social welfare network in South Africa, whether it's through the grant system, through the NPO Directorate, etc. We have the NYDA, we have the National Development Agency, and there's also the CETAs that we have. We have a great relationship with the chaplains in South Africa, as well as our relationship and ties to the ulama also in South Africa. So given the infrastructure that has been set up and the fact that the door is always open to develop new ones, as time passes and we are faced with new challenges, the ANC has been actively working on these matters. So we will never, in closing rather, we will never claim to be perfect, but we do try our best to insulate South Africans from the hardships of life. And that would be my entry point. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Comrade Lucian, for those remarks and also giving us a perspective of social compact. We'll now move on to the next speaker, which is Tabelo from the DA. Are you able to come in now?
Greetings, Usiso. I hope I'm audible, and greetings to the colleagues, the panel again also. First of all, I would like to thank this opportunity for you guys to organize such a platform. First of all, I would like to touch on the qualities and the values South Africa youth seek in their leaders. As young people, we've got this issue of saying maybe like, who can we trust? Will they deliver on what they promise? Will things ever change? What do they promise to hold for us? What does even the manifestos each president say that can be able to include young people? Again, the main question is who can we trust in terms of our leaders? Again, youth are not disinterested in politics. We, however, have a frustration by the actions of our leaders, even in terms of how they are leading themselves. For example, we need some leaders who can able to provide a good governance for our country. Because whenever young people, they feel that the service, the delivery, and everything that the country should be run and not being fulfilled, automatically they won't believe in terms of our leaders of how to do it. The qualities that come to our mind first relate to the basics principle of leadership relevant to the 21st century, also captured in the slogan, back to basics, to the concerning of public sector service delivery. We need to understand the challenges of South African workforce, our leaders, first of all, in the context of the economy, social and political condition, poor and education. The current lack, special skills and corruption, that was affecting maybe in terms of why young people are not able to see their life. But then good leaders, we must able to have accountability if you're a good leader. Whenever, like as a young person, I see a lead, I must able to account whenever like, there's something that is going wrong. For example, if we have mistakes that our leaders have made, you have as a leader have to admit those mistakes and able to fix them so that you can enable as young people to believe in terms of the leadership skills. Because whenever you don't have to take accountability, we just say that okay, this thing's not moving, and then young people they will not even just to repeat and see what is the country are. We need to have problem solving leaders. Problem is that we've got the problem in South Africa, a huge of problems which I can even count in terms of the country. But then, if you're a leader, you must able to solve these problems in terms of what doing, because we cannot have a leader that cannot able to solve problems that are being affected by the community and also by the youth in terms of the country. The other thing is we have to have a visionary leaders. Visionary leaders, you see, we need to have leaders who can able to say what is our country in 2030 should be looking like as from now, because we cannot have leaders that we can still able to make some same mistake and able to integrate with the same thing that we've been doing in the past. But then if we have a vision leaders saying, okay, young people, what do we do? What other countries are doing and therefore let's are able to come and implement in terms of doing this for our countries to able to grow. Coming to the equalization, the impact of the role and impact of coalition government in our nation. We personally know that this upcoming election, the government that's going to lead, it's highly possible that it's going to be the coalition government. So that is the issue with the coalition. First of all, I will just underline. First of all, whenever there's coalition, we've got different parties that are coming together to make government. And bear in mind that parties that do have their own different policies, parties that don't have even their own manifestos that they're doing that. I would just take an example of what happened in Johannesburg, the collision there. You see now that the focus now is which party or which coalition have to able to sustain the government able to win maybe to the mayorship. But then that coalition is affecting the basics of the people, which is service delivery to the people. Whenever we're doing the fighting battles in terms of not focusing on service delivery, as a country, we're not moving. I will just make a typical example for the coalition, for the DA, the multi-party that we had. We sit down with them, with all the parties and have a talk and see what are these people with their policies able to align with us? Are these people able to have what the people need to service delivery? The priority for that is on the service delivery in that multi-charter we had that one. We cannot have the coalition saying that as we are going now to the parliament, we're having talks in that part, and then you find that the other party is voting for that part. Similar what's happening with the NCEFF, they didn't sit down, but they can just say that I'm voting with them now. They even don't focus on it, but they didn't focus apart. Are they going to able to work together? You know, having something done in part. That is the effect that I'm going to say. But then if parties can come down and able to look at their policies, look at their manifestos. Okay, what is our core goal in this coalition? Is the service delivered? Okay, let's put it on writing down. Okay, this is our goal to be able to do that. But if you have just coalition that are unable to be that, we're not going to have it because there will be a huge unstable government. A lot of municipalities, even in KZN, we've got unstable government, and they tend to forget about the service delivered. And what affected them is the people of South Africa. And the people of South Africa, they don't know what's happening with this. They just need basic things: electricity, water, fixing potholes. That is the thing that they need in South Africa. Coming to the last chapter, with the strategies of fostering inclusive government, I will always say that for us to able to have the government, there are only things that we need to main focus on. The first thing, even in South Africa, is the unemployment. Whenever you see the unemployment rate in South Africa, it's telling you the huge story that in terms of moving around the country, we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. Because when this the thing that you need to fight to fight unemployment rate is to create a sustainable environment for everyone to able to come and invest in our country. I will make a typical example. We cannot have investors coming to our country or coming to our regions to able to invest business while we've got issues of load shedding, water shedding, potholes, roads in the country. Because companies, they are looking at these things. But then if we're still facing with that, we are not trying to create a sustainable conditions that we will not see investment, and then people will suffer from self-employment rates. And also looking at what are the policies that you are having like as a country. I can tell you even now, there is you see that we've got the red tape policies that are affecting the one, killing our jobs, triple BE, the quota system. No one wants to come to invest in a country where they are always reminded that you are not black enough to become this business. These are going to benefit. Because the same thing of the BE, if you tend to look at the poor, the unemployment, are the black people that are living now. But we say that you have this BE that you need to able to address and able to help black people. But that thing, it doesn't work because the majority of black people who are unemployed, people who are poor, are the black people. So you can just see that it doesn't work anything. But you must able to just have SDG, looking at all the race of saying, looking at the people, if they're poor enough, let us go and provide work and give them opportunity, not just to focus on a one-sided thing. Because you will find that now, even those PE companies, they are registered under the white or under the Indian people, but the face you say that I'm a black, that's owned by black, but the fund of the company is not even that black people. Looking at us for our education system, the education system, like we need to inclusive in terms of we need to look at if I will do something which other politicians don't want to do. Being honest, there's nothing free in this world. If someone said you receive free education, someone behind the closed doors does pay. University have sources of income. I'll take an example. Fees, they could receive from fees, subsidies, investors. So as a party, what they state, we are saying the poor must able to get free education. The middle class must able to get this subsidy from the NSFAS and such. And then the rich must pay. Exactly. Because I cannot go to University of Zululand, University of attending Johnston Hazing Child, and also from the guy from a poor part not paying same amount of tax, the rich man be able to pay. So there's a lot of things that we need to do in the governance. And the other thing that I want to put on is because
Right. Can I just ask you, please wrap up?
Oh, okay. Thank you, Professor. And for that student, I would just go to say of the devolution of power also. When you look at the South Africa in terms of the crime, because I can tell you, crime and employment, they are hand in hand. Because young people, if they're not getting jobs, they're just going to do crime. So we cannot even not treat symptoms while we're not just seeing laptop. But then, as a country of South Africa, we must just have to have leaders that are going to able to drive and understand the passion of that. Because young people, they want to be involved in politics, but the issue is our leaders, they are not tending to able to follow that path instead of doing that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for those compact way forwards and pragmatic ideas. We'll now move on to the next speaker, which is Dagan. Please may you come in from Action SA.
Thank you, and thank you for the platform and for everybody who's availed themselves for this panel discussion today. Speaking to the first question, I think young people really are interested in one main thing, and that is ethical leadership, ethical and transparent leadership. Ethical leadership is one of Action SA's core tenets and founding tenets. And we don't just speak about this, we actually put this into practice in a variety of ways. One of the ways that we are advocating for better ethical and transparent leadership is the reforming of our electoral system into a mixed system, a constituency and proportional based system, where 200 members of parliament are elected to single seat constituencies. This gives people direct access to their parliamentarians rather than them being part of a party list where they can be removed or added at the whim of leaders. So that's one way of bringing ethical and transparent leadership closer to people. Another example, for instance, is we're the only party in the country and the first party to trial run an open primary system for the 2021 elections in Joburg. This meant that anybody, whether they were a party member or just an ordinary citizen, could log onto our portal and vote for the candidate for their ward. And that candidate would be nominated by Action SA to run in the 2021 elections. We strongly believe that we need to get people more involved and their voices heard in who is leading their communities. It's a core tenet of ours. For instance, with our policy conference, we had a series of open panel discussions where we invited for submissions from the public, experts, stakeholders, NGOs. Every single one of those panel discussions, whether it was defense, environment, health, education, all of the policy areas were openly discussed and submissions made to our policy conference in September. Our policy conference, yet again, was the only policy conference that was live streamed. There was no closed sessions or smoke-filled rooms, dodgy back deals. Every debate and every vote could be seen by the public. So we have to really imbue this idea and put into action this idea of ethical and transparent leadership in practical ways and not just speak about it. Coalition governments are going to be a permanent feature of our political situation going forward. And I find it quite interesting that the colleague from the ANC there mentioned that the ANC doesn't govern in a coalition, yet they are part of what's called a tripartite alliance with the SACP and COSATU, which is a coalition of a sort. But let's not digress. Coalition governments are important because they create healthy tension in accountability. What we've seen with one-party rule, whether that be at a national, provincial level, is they become arrogant and they are not accountable. An example of this is in Tshwane and Hammanskraal, where Action SA pushed back against the appointment of Edwin Sodi and called for a forensic report into what was going on there. It's really important when we recognize the fact that coalition governments are the future of our country, that we need political maturity. This is going to be a steep learning curve for many of the parties in our country who are more interested in throwing chairs and water bottles at each other in parliament. But it's something that we have to work on as a society and hold political parties accountable for. The way Action SA has approached this is through what we've called, and our founding member of, the multi-party charter. This is saying we're being honest and level with voters and citizens of the country. We're laying out who we're willing to work with and who we aren't. We're not wishy-washy on what our intentions are. And when you have an open coalition, a sort of charter like this that is available for the public to read, again, it feeds back into the transparency points I made earlier. We have to be more transparent with the people we're asking to vote for us, and not do a 2-week session after the elections where it just becomes a seat and horse trading session with no discussion on common policy areas. So things like that, the political maturity that is needed is going to be an extremely steep learning curve for our country, but one that Action SA is learning from at local government level and is preempting by sitting down in a mature fashion to come up with a pre-election coalition, charter agreement. In terms of a government that is inclusive and effective, it's often cliche, but at the end of the day, government is for people by people. And it's not some separate monolithic thing that sits in Pretoria or Cape Town, hidden behind high security fences and blue light brigades. What we've seen, I think, increasingly, and what is creating a lot of disconnect for young people in particular, is a government that is not interested in what they have to say. That it is not willing to actually engage with the people that it has been elected to represent on a 5-year term. It often uses, for instance, parliaments merely as a rubber stamp and public participation processes as tick box exercises. And I think what we really need to look at is how do we really make those processes accountable and accessible to the most number of people. For instance, Action SA, one of the main ways you can make a government more effective is to remove corruption. And Action SA has got a raft of proposals in this field. We want to cut down cabinet to 18 members. We want to amend the constitution to create another Chapter 9 institution that is fighting corruption. We want to bring back the scorpions, because you cannot run an effective government if half of the money is landing up under mattresses somewhere. And so we really do need to bring back a sense of accountability and corruption-free ethical leadership into our political leadership in the country. And coalitions is a key part of that. And I think any party that says that coalitions are not is delusional in that regard. So we really have many, many ways that we need to address these things. But the most powerful, important tool that we have in the country is the elections coming up next Wednesday. And I really want to emphasize that it's through elections that you have the most powerful tool. Your vote is the exact same amount of power as the corrupt and the crooks. And by exercising that right, you are holding the ultimate accountability for all of the things we've just talked about now. Thanks so much. I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much, Dagan. You've given us such insightful ways forward and practicalities of the solutions. We're now going to move on to the next speaker, which is Ifran from Rise Mzansi, the new kid in the block. Ifran, over to you.
Thank you so much, Com, and very good morning to everyone who's taken the time to be here. I think I've had the fortune of being in a number of spaces throughout my life, and as a young activist, have grown into a leadership role primarily because of the space and the activism I've been engaged in. So the first point about the qualities and values of South African youth and what they seek in leaders is what I'll start with. One of the things that many young people today say to us and say to in the spaces we're in is that we're just distrustful of politicians. We're distrustful of false promises because they say one thing and do another. And a big part of coming from a civil society background is that you build trust by being in communities. And the point of a democracy and of being for, by, and with the people is ensuring that you're consistently engaging in dialogue and debate and in the kind of service that people feel inspired by. And so I'd say some of the core values for me that actually resonate with young people when they want to see new leadership is ethical leadership, leaders who don't make false promises, but who do what they say, capability. You cannot inspire hope and change if you are unable to do the very thing you say you're setting yourself out to do. I think there's an honesty about this as well. If you're dishonest, you see less and less trust, and the more you are able to be honest and open and transparent, you inspire people to want to be part and parcel of the change process. Beyond that, I think there are significant qualities that I perhaps want to allude to that I picked up from the days of Fees Must Fall, which was one of the most important moments of how collective leadership can actually take you forward and resonate with a mass base. And I think it was in that moment of Fees Must Fall where you saw leaders, young leaders of the EFF, the ANC, of the different parties and organizations from civil society step up and say, collectively, we need to put forward an agenda that we can all fight for, that is the interest of our people who we represent. And that was a moment that shook this country, the biggest moment, I'd say, post-democracy, where young people stood up and stood together. And so I think this idea of maturity is a big one. You need to be able to be willing to engage the difference that exists and say, what is the priority that South Africans are looking for? Or the people you represent from your constituency are looking for. And like the other speaker, I'd add on to this from a how this is possible. Rise Mzansi, all our candidates come from civil society, come from business backgrounds, academia, some from politics. And they were, all our candidates were nominated by the public. This public nomination was not just for us to decide who goes on our list, because the screening process done independently screened all these leaders to say whether or not they have track records, whether or not they have the ethical standard, there's no a criminal record, etc. And there was an independent panel that actually interviewed all of us, scored us, and put this final scored list onto the table so that we get the best leaders to lead. Because you would have seen our statement for this election season is that we need new leaders that are capable, ethical, honest, and have integrity. And this process allowed us to source some of the best people in this country from all walks of life and diversity to be put onto the list so that we can actually inspire people to say, these are the people who we know can make sure parliament works, make sure legislatures work, make sure there's greater accountability. The role and impact of coalition governments on our nation's future, I think we must be honest and real in that coalitions are here to stay. It is a maturing of our democracy. And those who deny this and say we shouldn't is just trying to clutch onto power that they are worried that they will no longer have. I think globally, you're seeing democracy mature in the way that coalitions do work. Even in South Africa, there are coalitions that work in local municipalities in some parts. But because the general experience is that it doesn't work, it's looked and frowned upon. I think we need a greater framework on how we can legislate this. But I want to speak about three things. You can't coalesce with people who you fundamentally don't believe in and you don't have the shared belief system. So your value system is important on who you're coalescing with. Are you anti-corruption? Are you anti-racist, etc.? The second is, do coalitions have what is the pragmatic approach to dealing with it? Because once the election is over and we get a mandate from people, we are able to then say, collectively on the table, we are willing to work with you if for the next 5 years we prioritize these 5 things. And the same happens with all parties and leaders there. Once we can do that, you can source at least the 5 core things that we can all commonly agree with, which will then be the program of action for the 5 years. That is a pragmatic way, and it helps us actually get towards an outcome that is in the best interest of South Africans. I want to end with saying that in order for us to do this better, we need mature leaders. The current crop of leaders are uncaring. I just came from a water service delivery march and meeting where you're seeing the backlog and civil servants unable to do the work because the politicians are the ones who aren't able to do the right thing. And so let me end off by saying we need new leaders who are capable and honest, but more so mature. And as young people, we need to be and set the level of maturity, which often we don't see when we engaging the current old crop in the establishment. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Infant, for those remarks. You've also given us some pragmatic and practicalities as a way forward. We're now going to be moving on to Chad from Good. The floor is yours.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me on the platform. Good morning also to those who have tuned in. I'm currently the legal officer for the Good Party as well as a candidate on the national list. And very recently, I became a councillor in the city of Cape Town as well. Look, I want to focus my conversation primarily on the role of the youth. So I would think as a good starting point, there's a common narrative that exists that the youth are apathetic or disinterested in politics, but we don't believe that to be true. It's more a situation where young people are frustrated and they are disencouraged. And you can see it's not difficult to see why. If you look at our young people, they are going through various socio-economic hardships. And in order for us to move forward and to gain the support and trust of our young people, we need to address these societal issues first as a point of departure. Then when we move to the certain values and the qualities that we are looking for in our leaders, I think it's important for me to bring up the Constitution. The Constitution of our country is a living document. It's progressive. It's one of the most progressive in the world. Yes, there are areas I can admit that might need some amending here and there to keep up with the needs of society. But as a point of departure, equality or the values in our leaders must reflect that of the Constitution. What we as young people would look for ultimately is for our elected leaders to prioritize the enforcement of the rights in the Bill of Rights and other rights of our Constitution, and especially as they relate to principles of social justice. That is very important, because imagine you as a young person, you're already not interested in politics, but then you turn on your TV every time and you're bombarded with the latest scandal or the latest government scandal relating to corruption. You're obviously going to be discouraged. So I agree with Action SA when they say the first and at the forefront of these qualities is ethical leadership. And ethical or issues relating to ethics deal primarily with, corruption, maladministration, nepotism, cadre deployment, bad governance, the potential to commit misconduct, and, any other thing related to that. And we cannot have people at the apex of our leadership who are involved in such activities, because that sets a bad example. I'm going to refer us back to the old phrase, you lead by example. That ultimately trickles down, and this is applicable to any party. This is applicable to any organization. So I want to bring it back and say that the leader must also, as cliche as it might sound, must be there to serve the people. He must be there to protect the interest of the many and not only the interest of the few. And he should not be ultimately a political entrepreneur. So that shouldn't be there for you to build your career. Politics shouldn't be there for career building, but for you to serve the people as a first point. And lastly, with regards to the qualities a young person might look for, we are looking for leaders who have ambition to change the status quo. We need leaders who are not apathetic, but empathetic to the challenges that the vulnerable in our society are facing, as well as the young people. This must be combined with the passion to resolve and address these challenges. And the Good Party has these kind of leaders. The leaders are a representation of every demographic in our society, age, and group. And we recognize and prioritize the needs of the most vulnerable in society. So with regards to coalitions, I think I just want to bring up that I attended the National Dialogue for Coalitions last year, which was actually hosted by the ruling party. Now, if that says anything, it means that even the ruling party acknowledges that there is a potential shift to a coalition government in the future. Now, what that means is there's a clear shift from one party dominance. And it is equally important also for me to mention that if you look at the contents of this election, it's just as important as 1994 for many young people. Secondly, nobody's equipped with a crystal ball. So we cannot say what's going to happen at the polls or on voting day. Our polling data and everything might say one thing, but that doesn't reflect what could happen on the day. So as a point of departure, our party, when it comes to coalitions, we state unequivocally that we will have this discussion once the election is over. There's many other factors and challenges facing coalitions, but it is definitely something that is going to potentially occur. Some of these challenges are caused obviously by immaturity and power mongering, and those who just enter into coalitions for different positions. But there are solutions to this problem. And those solutions are based on the values and principles by which coalition actions are taken. You must also look at the best interest of the residents of the country, of the communities, whether it's on local government level or provincial level, and you look at the best candidate as well. So we have a very extensive policy on coalitions, which is easily accessible to the public, but I'll just highlight a few things. So there needs to be compatibility with our party's values as well. We will prefer, obviously, to be in a coalition with progressive political parties who value the principles such as social, spatial, and environmental justice. There must also be input from those people that is within the communities themselves. Their input is obviously at the apex, or it's the most important factor, because we ultimately are a representation of the people. Then there must also be centrality. We also need to respect the general values of the electorate, and we need to enter these coalitions on a basis of necessity. Now, necessity is obviously also at the forefront, because there needs to be a reason for you to enter into the coalition. With regards to formalities or formalizing the coalition process, that was what the national dialogue was about. That, to a certain degree, can be potentially unconstitutional, especially if you introduce thresholds into that process. So, as the Good Party, we don't necessarily agree with minor legislative amendments to create a more conducive environment for coalitions, because, like I said, that could potentially be unconstitutional. Because if you look at the threshold policy, you look at a situation where parties might be in a coalition and they're just there because they're ultimately the bigger party. Then with regards to the third point, which is strategies for fostering inclusive government and effective government, the short and simple answer would be to elect Good as the ruling party so that we can implement the policies of our manifesto. But we believe that the strategy for inclusive and effective government should be a combination of electing leaders who possess the values previously highlighted above, or previously highlighted in my discussion around values.
Sorry,
with a
Chad,
combination.
Your time is up, so if you can just start closing, please.
Okay. So essentially, with regards to effective governance, it's about the proper balance between redress and going forward. So we need to address those societal issues, specifically the issue of spatial justice. We need to look at that because those are issues that relate to the legacy of apartheid spatial planning, and that will bring people closer to the community, closer to, jobs, which is in the inner cities. That will have a knock-on effect on crime. That will have a knock-on effect on poverty. Those are all issues that we need to look at, and we need to address the root causes of those problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chad. I think you make very valuable points, especially as still as an early democracy. So thank you for speaking to coalition governments. So we're going to move to the Q&A section now. And I think for me personally, and one of the things that we as SALO are interested in is how does your organization or protect the constitution? What's the focus on migrant rights, especially from people from Southern Africa and around the issue of migration into Southern Africa? So I leave it to the floor now. I think after that we're also waiting for a presentation from Kolofelo, but she'll just advise when she's ready to come in. But in the interim, can I have some hands? So I can start. I think maybe if there's an indication on what's the party position on issues around migrant rights, protecting the constitution, protection of minority communities. Mikateko, I see your hand. Can I take your hand?
Yes, and Thank you, and greetings to our fellow speakers and everybody. I'm sorry I can't do the video because my network is bad. But also, before I ask my question, I just want to make the point that I don't think South Africa is actually ready for coalition governments, because in municipalities where either the DA, EFF, and the ANC are in coalition governments and governing together, it has proven beyond reasonable doubt and beyond time that it is unsustainable, because instead of governing and making sure that people are getting service delivery, instead of that happening, we in fact fight amongst ourselves as political parties. And I'm talking about this across all political parties. But my question to the DA would be that, or rather to the leader of the DA, would be that what are some challenges that coalition government commonly faces in terms of stability in governance? Because from time to time, and because I stay in the city of Tshwane, I will make a point that service delivery is not taken serious. People are not given the adequate service delivery that they should be getting. The constitution is being disrespected in a sense that, for example, the Hammanskraal water issue, people are not given water. People are getting cholera there. So the reason why I'm also asking this question to the DA, it's on basis that they are the ones who are actually in coalition government in Tshwane. And also, when you take it to Cape Town, there's people in Khayelitsha who inadequately are not getting service delivery that they are supposed to get, as they are actually protected, or rather, it's said in the constitution that people, citizens are supposed to get, they actually have a right. It's a basic human right to have access to water and electricity. And in Tshwane and Khayelitsha, for example, people are not getting access to those things. So that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mikateko. Next, we can move to Mangaliso. Sorry, there was Mangaliso. Before we go to you, there was another hand from Tumelo Ndlovu, but I see he put his hand down, so I'm not sure his hand was before yours. Tumelo, do you still want to come in?
Let's just give it to Mangaliso for now. I'll just take it after that.
Sure. Thank you, Mangaliso. You're up.
Thanks, Fawzia. Mine is maybe also to the DA, but it will be applicable to all the other panelists. One of my concerns that I didn't find that it resonated with any of the political parties, or maybe it did to some extent, is the issue of crime, and more so the issue of contact crimes and how it has been exacerbated by the easy access there is now to guns. So I would want to know what is the standpoint of the different political parties, especially the DA, that is the governing party in the Western Cape. What is its position on gun control? I am assuming that maybe they would point me to the exact document that speaks on this, or they can just narrate it from a principled background from their own liberal standpoint. I'm interested in that. Secondly, also, what are some of the positions that the different political parties have on the current funding model for municipalities? As you would know that most municipalities will have direct revenue coming from the national government. Do they think that that model is sustainable and it should continue as such, or are there tweaks that needs to be introduced? Thanks for that.
Thank you, Mangaliso. So now, if we before we go to those questions, we'll give some panelists a little bit of extra time to think about it, and then Chidi from section 27 is going to come in for her remarks. After which we'll then just jump to panelists to answer some of those questions, and then we'll do another round of questions. Thank you so much. Let's go put on the moments. Hi, Chidi, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you. Sorry, I was talking to myself. Yeah, okay, I'm unmuted. I hope you can hear me clearly. Okay, cool. So thank you very much for the opportunity and for including civil society in general as a sector in these kind of conversations, because often when we talk about the political, that gets left behind, but there's so much power in an informed and participatory and an engaged civil society in the country, but also communities that are actively involved in that. So I'm just taking over from my colleague, Kulu, who had an emergency, and she may, I mean, if she jumps in, she might have really great insights, but I'll just respond to some of the conversations that have been had. So regarding coalitions, the politics and everything that's happening, this election season, yes, or this election that's happening in a few days' time, is seeming quite unprecedented, and there's quite a lot of anxiety among different people. And leading up to it, there's quite a number of legislation pieces like the Bella Bill for Education, the NHI Act now in healthcare, and many others. And I think that it may be the start now, but following the elections, there's going to be some perspectives on that. So I am interested to see what the different political parties here have to say, because I think the colleague from representing the DA said that the people don't care about other issues like affirmative action or international relations or trade policy, but are more interested in service delivery. But of course, we can't have the service delivery, first of all, effective service delivery without effective legislation to support that or to enable that, an enabling legislative environment. We see that with education and how we've had to actually take government to court for eradication of pit latrines in Limpopo, among other things that have really advanced the right to basic education in those areas. So I am interested in what the various parties' views are on legislation, enabling that legislative environment to advance these constitutional rights. Also interested in the speaking of legislation, also their views on the various legislations. Are they intending on reversing, for instance, not the NHI Act, but also the Bella Bill, because it's been quite controversial, even though as civil society, we see it to be quite a progressive piece of legislation and are worried that it might entrench, that reversing that might entrench the inequalities that we currently see in basic education. And then moving on, I think that while there are a lot of political promises that are being made, as is the nature of the elections, there's people who say, oh, we're going to increase this, we're going to have more learners in school, we're going to increase access to quality education. You know, all of those, there are a lot of promises and they all sound really good, to be honest. But I think as someone who works with the national budget and resourcing this, one of the biggest barriers to actually advancing the rights to basic education and to healthcare is that we don't adequately fund those rights. So we're not actually funding education in the way that we should. So even though in the first 15 years post-apartheid, there was an investment drive towards basic education, the increases to basic education have been below inflation, which means that the cost of living has been eroding that investment. And we still find ourselves 30 years after apartheid with an education system that's two-tiered, where a minority of learners are getting really good education, but the majority of learners are still experiencing the legacies of apartheid being entrenched, and we still have an underfunded school system and overcrowding. So I'm interested in what each political party, be it the ANC, the DA, Good Party, Action SA, have to say about resourcing education and healthcare. So there are promises that are being made, but what are the, how are they marrying their economic policy to the actual education and health? Basically, I'm also asking about, like, are there any plans to increase funding? Are there any plans to overcome underspending? I know people talk about corruption, and that's quite a hot topic one, but when we look at the budgets themselves, we're seeing like really where we're losing money is that money just gets returned back to treasury and is not being spent because provinces don't have the capacity to actually spend that money to eradicate pit latrines. So I am interested in that perspective as well. So I hope that's okay. I think I can wrap up. Also happy to answer any questions from people that they might have about civil society's participation in the election process. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Judy. So now we'll go to the panelists again who can answer some of those questions that were asked in the first round, and then we'll move to the answer section. So we can go in the same order. Okay, I see Chad's hand is up. So Chad, you're welcome to give your inputs.
Okay, so I think there was quite a few questions now. I'll summarize a few: crime, coalition, billable, NHI, policies on trade and resourcing, education and health. So I think I'll just tackle it in that specific order. With regards to perhaps coalitions, as Fawzia pointed out, we are fairly a new democracy. 30 years is still fairly young in terms of a democracy. For 30 years, we had one-party dominance, and in the last 15, we had the DA here in the Western Cape. This means that the concept of coalitions itself on a national and provincial level is going to be fairly new. There's going to be some trial and error. So we have to obviously implement it with certain values and make sure that it aligns with constitutional principles. The question that was asked, the person gave examples of failing coalitions, but there are also examples of coalitions that worked and examples of where coalitions had to step in order to solve certain problems. That's my response on that. Then with regards to crime, I never spoke really much on crime. I did touch on it, but because of the nature of this dialogue, which is centered around youth. But in order to stop crime, our party's stance on it is quite simple. We need a combination of more skilled police, more effective policing with social work, with a cohesion between social development and policing, because that will ultimately stamp out the root causes of the problem. No one is inherently born a criminal, and if we attack that at the infancy stage, we will definitely be able to solve crime. You will look at most parties, they are prioritizing more policing or heavy-handed policing, but that just entrenches the cycle of crime, because what happens if there's minor drug offenses, those people go to jail, or you look at the situation with gang members, it actually just increases the growth of gang membership. Because what happens is the person commits a crime, he goes to jail, he becomes part of a gang, he comes out, he commits crime again. It's a circle, it's a vicious circle. Specifically with gun control, I think our country's legislation itself has effective policies on gun control. If you look at the Criminal Procedure Act, it deals extensively with gun control in terms of illegal firearms and ammunition. So that needs to be properly implemented, and that can be done through more resourcing of the NPA who prosecute these crimes and take it further. Then with regards to the billable, our party's stance is mainly that we support the billable. It has very good points. There's the contentious issues obviously relate to the criminalizing of parents who keep their kids out of grade R. Now, we do believe that kids should attend school from grade R, but it's not practically possible for everybody living in this country. That is more prevalent to wealthier people and school situations where there's a capacity to take on grade R learners. So we don't necessarily agree with the criminalization, but if you look at the bill itself, it says that people will only be criminalized with just cause. Obviously, those are parents who have bad motives for keeping their kids out of school. Other factors include homeschooling being regulated. That's not an issue. That assists in accounting for where every learner is. Then there was one of the main issues is the decentralization of the powers of the school SGB by giving the HODs the provincial HODs oversight into admission and language policies. We fully support that, because for years, language specifically was used as a tool to keep certain people or certain demographics out of certain schools. If you look at your previous Model C schools, for example, they had certain language policies which barred certain people from entering their schools or being admitted into their schools, even if they live within the 5-kilometer radius of that specific school. So more oversight in that regard. Just make sure that school SGBs their powers are not going unchecked. Then with regards to NHI, same thing. The bill is very progressive in nature. We do believe in universal healthcare for all, but implementation is going to require some time in that regard. And that's where the issue currently stands. But as a whole, the introduction of that bill is a good thing. Then policies on trade should be not as restrictive, in the sense of that is what attracts economic investment and which will ultimately improve our economic growth rate, thus having a knock-on effect on creating jobs. The last one with regards to resourcing and education and health. Now that's the Premier of the Western Cape, Alan Winde, admitted that he took money from education and health to fund the safety plan. The safety plan in the Western Cape, which is failing at the moment. Now, if you look at how can you take money out of education and health and put it into a failing safety plan, putting more policemen on the ground or boots on the ground, which ultimately takes away from what Good is saying, where we need more social workers instead of more police, which further criminalizes the conduct of our youth. So that's my input on resourcing education and health. It definitely needs to be more resources given to education and health. And then, sorry, just the second question that the person asked with regards to crime and the current funding of the municipalities. The model is not necessarily the problem, because like my colleague of Section 27 said, there's an issue where money is sent from national government to local government, and that money gets sent back. Those directly impact problems like human settlement or human development of affordable housing. So we now heard in the recent debates that 200 million rand was sent back instead of using that money to build actual houses for the people who need housing. So that's basically my input on all of those topics. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chad. Tumelo, I'll come to you after the panelists have answered. If you can just move to some of the other panelists. So from ANC Youth League, from BURSA, Action SA, DA. So I see Dagan, your hand is up. You're welcome to come in. But can I kindly ask you to keep it quite short, because we have a large number of panelists, so please keep it short. Thank you.
Thank you so much. There's a lot of topics here and could go on quite a while, but I'll try and move very briefly through a couple of them. And to start with the general question that was asked by yourself around migration rights. Action SA has been very clear on this policy from the party's inception that we do have a problem with the current situation we find ourselves with, a number of undocumented people in the country. And the reason, well, part of the problems I'll unpack quickly now in a couple of points is, firstly, we have a dysfunctional home affairs. So that essentially means that people who want to come to our country legally are unassisted, and basically the doors are shut on them. And so their status then becomes, not by any fault of their own, but by the fault of a failing home affairs, an illegal person. And so then what that in turn means that if somebody is maybe working on a job site and they don't have a documented status, they're very susceptible to abuse, whether that be underpay, whether that be unsafe working conditions. They have no recourse, because it's very easy for a boss to say, well, I'll just phone up the Department of Labor or Home Affairs and I'll deport you. So we're very concerned with the current situation that Home Affairs is in and the lack of a capacity there for it to actually process people who want to come to this country. The second problem that we've identified is the porous nature of our borders. And we must be very clear that doesn't just include our land borders. That also includes our sea and air borders. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, we saw the biggest drug bust in history at Durban. And when we have our borders in the way they are, it is very easy for a lot of other problems to arise, whether that be counterfeit goods that come into our communities and poison our communities, whether that be drug and smuggling, whether that be poaching, whether that be human smuggling. And so actually this is quite clear that we need to look very closely at a way to make the Border Management Authority effective in the management of our borders, both land, sea, and air. And a couple of the other things, I'll move on to the coalition conversation. And I mentioned it in my opening remarks that Actionist is very clear with who it is and isn't willing to work with. And I think it's very incumbent on parties before the electorate goes to the polling booths to make that clear with them as well. We have a lot of parties who are very wishy-washy about who they will and won't work with by saying that, no, we'll wait for after the elections. I would like to remind the parties and everybody that we have a 2-week period to form a government after a national government if we find ourselves in a parliament that doesn't have a majority party. To say that you're going to wait for that 2-week period to form a program of governance is quite frankly absurd. And you're fooling yourselves and you're fooling the people that are trusting you with their vote. So I think it really is important that we are honest with the electorate about our intentions and that we don't, allow the foxes to guard the hen house, and we are very clear with the electorate about our intentions as political representatives and parties about our intentions post-elections. There's also the conversation around crime. Action SA, and I can speak particularly in the Western Cape, the approach to crime is one of a holistic approach. Putting thousands and thousands of more officers on the streets isn't necessarily going to cause and address the root causes of crime. So there really is a conversation to be had about how do we address the root causes, whether that be spatial planning, whether that be the economic situation we find ourselves in, as well as addressing the corruption within the police force. Most of the guns on our streets in this province are from police. So we need to have a holistic conversation about how do we sustainably address the conversation around crime, not, as I saw recently, buying basically spy planes that fly over Cape Town. I mean, okay, you're not actually going to address the root cause of crime that way. In terms of the bailable and health funding and that conversation that was mentioned, Action SA has a couple of caveats with the bailable, in particular around the language policy. We strongly believe that language policies should be left up to school governing bodies as they best know the communities that they're serving. In terms of the NHI bill, we fundamentally agree with the right for every South African to have health care, but the implementation of an unfunded bill, which has costs as high as 200 billion rand, with no funding from Treasury, is not going to solve the problem if you can't get the basics right. So our position is quite clear that we have to get the basics right, whether that be clinics or provincial hospitals, rather than another government piece of paper that will sit and collect dust on a shelf. I'm just having a quick look over the notes to see if I've missed anything there. There were many points that were raised. But I think that's covered the main points from my side for now, to keep it brief and allow the other panelists opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dagan. We're going to move to Irfan now from RISE SA, and then Lucian Davids afterwards from ANC Youth League, and then Stabelo from the DA. Can I again ask that you please keep it to 5 minutes, please, because we are going to run out of time. Thank you.
Thanks, leader. And I commend you guys for hosting a session like this. But I think as this matures, we have to realize if we keep it open-ended for so many issues, it mustn't come across that we don't have points on these issues. So I can keep it short, but there's many questions that were asked. So I hope those listening will also go to our website and see these plans. So number one, funding model for municipalities has to change. I think the meeting I attended just now was about the water crisis in Johannesburg and Gauteng in general. And the fact that Johannesburg, as it stands, has a 24 billion rand backlog on infrastructure upgrades. And you can't expect municipalities alone to be funding these projects. And that's why the CAPEX budgets are being spent, but you can only start doing one project, a few projects at a time, when we need an overhaul and we need it quickly because of the collapse of these systems. And so I do agree with the speaker who asked the question. The funding model has to change. National and provincial has to come on board. And what we currently see is a misgovernance between the three arms. On top of that, let me add that you also have to start generating, and the reason why our economy is not growing is because entities of the state are dysfunctional. You can't grow the economy if Eskom and Transnet, key state-owned entities, are in collapse and perpetually changing leadership. You can't have a stable environment when these state-owned entities, that is the primary driver of helping us strengthen and grow the economy, is broken. On the question on human rights and immigration, and I think perhaps a bit of foreign policy, RISE believes in human rights-centric framework, what's in the interest of South Africans, but also looking at the continent and the globe within a human rights framework. And so we do agree that the immigration system has to change because there are too many loopholes there, safety issues around the border protection, etc. But we do this through a humane lens, recognizing that people also come here leaving conflict zones, leaving areas where the climate change has been harsh on the environment, etc. So we do need a human rights approach. On education and healthcare reform, I'm aligned with my comrade from Section 27. We need to make sure that the austerity budgets come to an end. And we also need to make sure these budgets are spent on the actual change and in the communities that it's meant to serve. Too much of this is being hollowed out and stolen. And for us, for example, we agree on universal health coverage, but how can we entrust Amasela to actually be the ones who carry forward this when they were the ones who were spending on skinny jeans when hospitals were collapsing? And so this is the reason why we say we need the reforms and we need new leaders. We think of education reform, for example, holistically. The norms and standards have to be implemented. We need a crisis plan that in 1 year, all schools have the proper sanitation and no pit latrines. We need, and we have a water and sanitation plan on our website that can be looked at. This is also a question about the curriculum. Is it geared up for the current context? But one of the primary things that is not spoken about in education reform is the fact that we need to have universal ECD access, and all communities need to be supported by government at an ECD level. So that needs to be implemented and supported. We also need to curb the fact that almost half of learners who enter school are dropping out. And so there's a massive unemployment we're seeing is also as a result of many young people not having skills and a basic certificate like matric. And so what we need to do in this next 5 years is upskill at least 1 million young people so that they have the capacity to find jobs and be employable. Resourcing is a big question, and we speak about it in many forms. Yesterday at the TAC summit in Orange Farm, I spoke about from within the health sector, for example, we want to increase the sugar tax to 20%. Part of that will be about how we stop supporting changes and programs that help mitigate against the health risks. So you're not dealing, you're actually supporting and uplifting primary health care, clinics, etc., mental health services, etc. But in our new and just jobs plan, we speak about a wealth tax for the rich in this country. And that wealth tax must also be how we actually get enough funding for infrastructure upgrades, etc. We also go further by saying we need a SMME fund that can help support local businesses and entrepreneurs. But again, it's not possible to support them if they don't have the basic services. And so we agree that the basic services need to be fixed, and that means municipalities have to be functional. On the question around crime, we have a paper called Freedom from Fear. It's a very well put together document, but the 4 pillars that I'll just mention here are restoring trust in the guardians of safety. So we can't have an SAPS that is corrupt, and so we need to deal with effective and clean governance within the police service, professionalizing the service as well. How do we make the system work again? We need to also introduce our prosecutions is also a problem, and therefore you need proper skills, detectives, more investigative capacity, more intelligence gathering services that actually support proper and effective policing, more support for the local CPFs that exist in communities. Two other points are addressing the root causes. Socioeconomic issues are very hectic in this country. It's extreme, in fact, in many levels. And so if you're not going to fix crime unless you fix poverty and inequality, and then, okay, I'm going to close off, working together and working with communities rather than against them. The last thing I want to add as I close is the fact that one of the key things South Africans or politicians have not spoken about in these election seasons is the issue of hunger. Now, 20 million South Africans are food insecure, and if you're not going to provide a plan to fix and make sure there's food on the table for every single South African, these other issues will also just be secondary. And so we have a plan around hunger, and I urge you to go and actually see how we think reforms to the food system should be done. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Irfan. I think a very valuable point is that 5 minutes isn't necessarily adequate to be able to convey the full sort of value proposition that the respective parties offer and their policy positions on the respective issues. So definitely noted. Next we have Lucian and then Stabelo, and then we can do another round of questions. Lucian?
Shukran, Fauzia, for giving me the platform. Just give me a second quickly. I have some noisy kids in the background. I just want to quell them, and then I'll respond to some of the questions. Paul, really be quick. I'm just going to mute quickly.
Oh, okay. How about we move to Stabelo, then we'll come to you afterwards. Stabelo?
Hi, Enes, I'm here. Thank you again for the opportunity. Now, there's quite a lot of questions, also some I'm gonna touch base on those that I will able to pick up. First of all, there was a question regarding to the challenges and the stabilities with the coalition government, more especially in Tswane because of not functioning well. Well, that is one of the reasons maybe we as a DA say that let's have maybe a multi-charter with the different political to have an understanding of what needs to be done. Because, you know, whenever you are having this collision with some people who are not maybe understanding, saying that let's go to support you guys, but you're not having something in written paper down saying that what are we going to support here? That is what is starting to fund. Because, for example, if there's a budget that must be passed, and then you find that those minorities parties maybe that in collision, they will say they will not support that budget. And whenever saying they don't support that budget, it's meaning that the service delivery will be affected and people will suffer. I will take a typical example in KZN, in Umhlatuze municipality, where the DA had supported the IFP in terms of written down. Whenever there's a budget is being written down, we're able to sit down and see how much money is going to the service delivery and how much fund is considered, and then we approach from them. But if maybe we didn't have that sort of agreement paper, maybe voting, maybe the IFP will say that we're not going to support you guys. Let us just move into table. So that is an issue with the coalition. Let us first help with the parties sit down and able to draft something. What we are doing the multi-charter, saying, okay, if we want to govern South Africa, we need to agree on certain things before we're able to get that, rather than to be. That is what affecting them, because now politicians, they tend to able to fight in the chambers and fight the council while they're forgetting that people need to get safety, basic safety. Coming to the coalition immigration, I think whenever there is more like I can say maybe there are better opportunities, people they tend to move to that certain place. That's the reality. Even people in KZN, you find that there are people from KZN saying that now I'm living in Cape Town. That people is not knowing anyone, and will tell you that I'm going to find a place in maybe College or in Nan where I'm going to stay. And then you find that the capacity of people going to in that particular case, it's been able to not be fulfilled with the current government that need to be able to shut. Meaning that there are many people squatted in that particular places in terms of that time. So that making the government difficult to able to service all the people. That's why I believe that we shouldn't go to a certain region, but let us let's do in similar province. KZN must able to create job opportunities. Eastern Cape must create job opportunities, etc., so that you can able to divert it. In the terms of immigration of South Africa, as a DA, I would just make a stand that we need to secure our borders. Our borders are currently secure. You can see that even there was a current case that happened in, I think, Delta Cape Town, whereby a Zimbabwean shot those Sasol guys because that guy was illegally in our country, and then that guy able to commit crime, and then we lose him. So as a DA stand of immigration, let's secure borders. We are not saying that people from outside are not coming, but let that being documented and coming with the ID so that they can know who is in our country and what is he doing in our country in terms of that. Not rather than to everyone to come inside and out. Because even that immigration, it's taking out the job opportunities in terms of because you find that whenever you're doing a service cars, you find the cars maybe from Mozambique, they will come and say, I will just do a service for a car, maybe for 300 rand. And then people in South Africa, they say, maybe I will just do a service car with 700. And then people will tend to go to support these illegal people because their prices are so low. Finding that our people, they don't able to get now support as a type of the consumers. And taking to the crime, the crime in South Africa, we must, our South African police, there are most of, you find that there are people that are corrupt. You cannot, as a policeman, let me just take a simple example. If I'm a policeman, you cannot pay a policeman having a salary and driving, maybe I can make 2 Audis or 2 PM, but with the salary of a police, it keep on telling you that there's something wrong upon. As a salary, we need to do a lifestyle audit in those departments, saying that one much you earn, you shouldn't be able to buy having the Range Rovers while you are still earning a salary for a police. Because the same police, if there are drugs in my place, and I'm going to report in the police station, the same police people, they are coming to keep and say that Tabelo was able to go and tell you that you guys are selling drugs. And the next day, Tabelo will be no more. And then we find that our communities now, they're suffering to come and report the crime. So we must able to see within even the SAPC in terms of crime of doing that. And also this thing of devolving powers. We cannot have whenever like I need something with the police station in because they say I'm referred to patrol. But they just devolve the powers in the province so that the province is able to convert. Because in different regions, we've got different types of crime. The crime happened in KZN, maybe you cannot see me the crime happened in Eastern Cape. They come in Gauteng. So they're not able to have our standing as a province what you do. Coming to the Pella Bill, it keep on telling that we just opposing to it, the Pella Bill, because it tells us that you want to take powers from the SGPs and also the parents and give it to the ministers. That is totally out because in different communities, it's our parents, who are SGPs, who understand that environment what's happening. We cannot just tell by a government to say what to do in that particular place. Because even from my side, I was being raised in a community whereby I was playing maybe soccer. Whenever I'm doing wrong, the people that are able to share me are the people with my parents and able with something. That is why I'm saying that we're not supporting them. And then coming to the NHI, it's a good thing to whenever but then you cannot able to implement because now what they're going to do, they're saying that they want to give everyone to have insurance to everyone to be equal. But then let us fix the public hospital first. Let us fix the public facilities because whenever you're looking at the places like private and hospital, they're totally different. So automatically, people they will just tend to go to the private when they do each other. But then you will find out now the partitions they will tend to move away because they won't pay for service. For example, now I was having church with some private teachers saying that hey, they're starting now to apply to see outside the country to go skin and you see now that in South Africa we're losing skills people to able to fund, and then that NHI is going to be in place. There will be no everyone is able to more especially the nurses, the doctors in our country. And going to the gun control, there was a question that about the gun control. That gun control is saying that we must be taking guns from our society. But then you find that gun is it's our self-defense. As a DA, we support the right to the law-abiding citizen to own and carry firearms, provided that the reason of safety requirements are met. Because we cannot have in the same police whenever you're calling the police to say there are criminals outside, and then they can come in about 2 hours to able to After then, but if I do have some permission, can reasonable, I can able to provide and self-defend myself. That is our stand. I'm saying no. Now, because we find that even the VIPs, the ministers, they do have VIPs who are able to giving budget and they are being protected in terms of jungler. So why should I not able to have my own kind? And then the last one, when I'm talking, it's under the, I'm not sure if I think I've covered all of the questions that I'm able to now take. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that comprehensive. I just want to double check, Mikatega, is that an old hand or a new hand? Okay, your hand is it an old or new hand?
It's a new hand. It's a new hand.
Okay, let me just quickly go to Dumela. Dumela, I just want to double check whether your hand is an old hand or a new hand.
Well, I my hand before, but yeah, I'm just coming back. I just gave a chance to all the panelists. I just want to ask a quick question.
Okay, so let's then do Mikateko, Dumela, and I don't see in that order. And then we'll give the speakers to wrap up as a closing remarks.
Okay. Thank you, colleagues. I have quite a number of issues to raise. I just hope I don't take more than 5 minutes, but I feel like the colleagues from the DA and the Action SA are speaking from the point of privilege. And I'm saying this because we are in a democratic country which has a democratically constituted and elected government. And there are certain things that are governed by policies. For example, the issue of SGBs, whether the parliament implements the Bella Bill or not, you will not move the issue of SGBs without making sure that you revisit the South African Student Act or Schools Act of 1996, because there the SGBs are given a responsibility by the same Department of Education to make sure that they govern the schools. And these are people that have been elected constitutionally. So there is no point of pointing out on matters that that are actually governed by policies. Remember that the Schools Act is a policy on its own. Also, I don't think that in South Africa we have a foreign problem. I think we have a policy issue when it comes to migration. And I'm saying this simply because we cannot keep on justifying that we have so many foreigners in South Africa who are taking our jobs, whereas they possess a scarce skill that is not in the country currently. And also when the colleague from Action SA says that they are not saying that they don't want foreigners in the country and what, I feel like it's a lie, because they are actually leading in municipalities. Their leader was once a mayor in Johannesburg, and he went on a rampage in Johannesburg to make sure that Nigerians, or rather all the foreigners that were there in Johannesburg, were kicked out. And that's the language that he's still speaking now. So I think that if we are going to come to this platform and misrepresent facts just so that a particular political party can get recognition, it does not make any difference, because we continue on lying on issues that are affecting our people on the ground. We need to work on the migration policy, where we've had the Minister of Home Affairs amending the immigration white paper, and there are organizations that have rejected that. If you ask the question, why are they rejecting that, you will not get an answer. But my point is, to my colleagues and yourself, Busi, is that we need to make sure that some of these issues that are societal issues are actually solved at the grassroots level before we can involve the government, because it is us on the ground who are staying here, who are staying with these people. We know which ones are rotten and we know which ones are not rotten. So we can be able to assist the government to make things much easier and simple, because we live in a democratic country. And on the issue of NHI, yes, everyone is agreeing with it, and all the benefits that are there. But I feel like colleagues are dilly-dallying around the issue simply because they do not want to share the same vision that the government is sharing with the poor of the poorest on the ground. We cannot keep on making, in fact, we cannot keep on giving privilege on particular people that have certain amounts of money and privilege in the expense of people who are poor. Organically, South Africa has a high rate of unemployment, has a high rate of people, who lives in the villages. Why can't we make sure that we share the same benefits that the rich are having with the poor? That's my point. Thank you.
Thanks, Mikateko. Tumelo, and then we'll get the speakers to come in after that.
Okay, thank you so much. I was really taken away by a point made by one of the panelists. He said this is a trial and error. Now, this really unsettles me, because saying trial and error, I mean, this is national elections we're talking about here. This is livelihoods, people's lives we're talking about. And saying this is a trial and error situation, now we are trying something that has already failed dismally. From where I live, the DA has definitely failed dismally with this. Alongside the action essay, they have failed dismally with this coalition thing that we tried. And look, it's not working. It cannot work at a national level. It doesn't work. Even people that are not politically conscious will tell you that things have changed, although they don't have the right wording to express it. But they will tell you that no, man, ever since so and so came on, certain things have stopped. And I kind of get a notion that they by they I mean the DA and the Action SA are very selective with their service delivery, because it's something we see. Like Mikateko said, we are on the ground, we see these things and we are exposed to these things. I mean, you can just take a long drive to the eastern side of Tshwane, and you'd see things being done that will never be done here in the township side. So I just want to pose a question, if I may, to the DA, that what will be done differently at a national level that they they could have done. I mean, they could have done these things here at local government level. You understand? I mean, you can't go to grade 2 if you have failed grade 1. I mean, if you have failed grade 1, then you just have to sit back and let the big boys run it. Because like, honestly, I'm talking about what I have experienced, especially in the township. Things have changed. Recreational areas have decayed. One recreational area was sacrificed for a residential area, and now the very same people that were playing at that recreational area have now resorted to alcoholism and drug. I mean, it's things we see. This thing of coalition, it doesn't work, because people at the top don't get along, and then it trickles down to the ground, and now we are left hopeless and with our palms with our hands open, waiting for something to come, and nothing comes. You understand? So seeing this happen at a national level would be horrible. That's just my opinion. So the question I'd just like to, what will they do differently at a national level? I just hope it doesn't happen, but it's just a question. I just want to hear what they have to say about that. I mean, the trial and error part just took me away, honestly. I was really taken away by that. Thank you so much. That's just my point.
Thank you so much for your questions. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to give each speaker a chance to wrap up, and when they're wrapping up and their closing remarks, they will then be able to answer the questions that have been posed. I'm going to go in the particular order I'm seeing on my screen. So I'm going to go Chad, Dagan, Lucius. Then the next three will come in. So in that order, please may speakers answer the questions as you're giving your closing remarks.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you once again for the opportunity. With regards to Tumelo, I think I was the one who perhaps said trial and error. I will concede there that I may have used the incorrect phrase, but as you pointed out now yourself, you are talking from your own experience and where you live. Now, Tshwane is not the only province in this country. It's also not the only community that is experiencing hardships. And there are, like I said, evidences of coalitions that worked. Now, we can dilly-dally and go back and forth about how it's not working in certain areas and how it's working in others. But the reality is we are shifting from a one-party democracy. So if we're debating coalitions, what would the alternative then be if there's not going to be a majority party? And that is why we need to look at ways where it can effectively actually work together. Now, during the discussions, we've touched on numerous topics and numerous issues. So in my closing, I just want to redirect and bring it back to the topic of the young people. So the youth people needs to have a voice, and they need to have the different socio-economic issues addressed, because that is a good starting point. And it may seem cliche, but the ruling party is ultimately going to rule over the youth who are the future. Now, from my party's perspective, young people are involved from policy making right to the ground floor, and they are also sitting on the national and executive. I myself am quite young, and I'm a national candidate. So there is input from the youth from our party's perspective, and there are several reasons why I think our party does deserve a seat in parliament or more. And the reasons for that is basically set out in our manifesto. I don't want to ramble on about those policies, but we are committed to achieving social justice for all South Africans and not only a few South Africans. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. Dagan?
Thank you, everybody, for the opportunity today. It's been a very robust engagement, a very long election season, and I hope to see you all at the booths next week, Wednesday. In closing, I'll answer a couple of the comments that were directed towards Action SA. I do encourage everybody here to go to actionsa.org.za and have a look at our manifesto policies that go into far more detail than we can in 5 minutes. But I think let's start with the coalition question. The concern was raised around how coalition governments are working. And the main thing that I think I've emphasized is we have to preempt and learn from those experiences, in particular, the local government experience. The way you do that is through mature political dialogue, through forums like the Multi-Party Charter. You cannot bury your head in the sand and throw your hands up in the air and say, oh, it's not working. The mandate has come from voters. We must respect that mandate. They have said that no one party should get a majority, and it is incumbent on political parties and mature political parties to chart a way forward. And that is exactly what the Multi-Party Charter does. In regards to the conversation around the migration question, I again encourage leaders to look at our manifesto that goes into a lot of depth beyond just sort of sloganeering, and addresses not only the push factors and pull factors, the border crisis and the crisis within Home Affairs, and the way that we need to implement the Immigration Act of 2002. In closing, I think, though, I really do think that the conversation around ethical and transparent leadership we've had today is the most important conversation, because it's only through ethical and transparent leadership that we can fix South Africa. I've laid out here very briefly some of the proposals that Action SA has put forward, in particular, looking at the creation of single seat constituencies, the amending of the constitution to create another Chapter 9 institution that fights corruption, the bringing back of Scorpions, as well as the way that the party embodies the mantra of ethical leadership. And I would like to finish off by encouraging everybody here to share with your friends, your family, your uncles, your aunts, that the only way that we can fix South Africa is, and the most powerful tool in your toolbox to fix South Africa is the ballot box and the ballot paper. And I think it really is incumbent on us in this last couple of days before the election to really hammer that point home, whatever your political choice may be, to do a bit of research, and to turn up on election day. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dagan. Lucian?
Hi, shukran for giving me the opportunity once again to just speak. Well, first two things that I'd like to do is thank Salo for giving us the platform. I'd like to thank all of the speakers as well for giving it inputs, and more importantly, of the participants that are here joining the discussion. We are most grateful for the questions that we've received from you, for us and ourselves to probe and, really, especially for the ANC to do some big soul searching, in terms of governance and making sure that, in the respects where we are failing to improve and in the respects where we are doing good, to just continue on that. And I would like to, emphasize on the fact that when I did make reference to the state of coalitions, I was not saying that it is not a reality that South Africa was facing. I was merely mentioning that it is something, if we can, should be avoided. And the reasons I gave, it was that there is a general political incoherence in South Africa, in the South African context, where we are dealing with political parties that have leaders who have very big personalities. So you'd find that the organizations may have good policies, but because the leader in front, has a certain feeling or a way with who they, in relation to the other political parties that they're working with, positions might change, they may not agree on certain things. And so may the case be, we could find that on positions like, certain policy positions like the NHI and such, it was, if we look at EFF as a left party in our country, we would think that they are supporting, programs and policies that are pro-poor, but stood against NHI. So it's things like these to deliver. And in fact, when it came to the issue of coalitions in Johannesburg, they'd rather side with the DA and the ANC, just to fight national or the governing party. So it's in instances like these that I was making references to the fact that there is a political incoherence, largely. Right. So these are things that we need to assess before we talk about, bringing on the dawn of just coalitions for the sake of coalitions. Yes, it's a reality, but there's a lot of important factors that we need to take into account, and especially coming from leaders from the multi-party charter, which are constantly trying to demonize and fight against policies that are for the working class and the poor. I mean, if we're talking about employment equity, if we're talking about expropriation of land without compensation, if we're talking about health, education, how do you even find the moral ground to to say that you are here to effectively change things in the country when you are fighting against these things which are here to aid the majority and not just, campaign for the interest of a minority while projecting that you were doing things to save South Africa. That's just completely dishonest and misleading the voter base that we have. So our message as the ANC Youth League has always been supporting the ANC, supporting an African agenda on our continent. However, we as the ANC Youth League has also been vehemently fighting to make sure that we hold our leaders accountable. Just a day ago, we could see on the issue of crime that our president, Colin Malachi, had delivered a memorandum of understanding to the National Minister of Police, Bekitele, as well as the National Commissioner. Before then, we had a big march in Mpumalanga to speak on jobs. We marched to SASO, handed them a list of CVs of people that they must employ who have degrees and are eligible to work. So the ANC Youth League has been vehemently fighting to make sure that we hold our leaders accountable against Pravin Gordhan as well. Again, as a member of the ANC Youth League, we're not saying that we are perfect, but most importantly is that collectively, and especially working with members of civil society as well, we can collectively bring change. The important part is that we just continue to fight and make sure that we address the needs of our people. Thank you.
Thank you, Lishan. We're now going to go in the order of going Efron, CD, and Sabela. Efron, you may do your closing remarks.
Thank you so much, leader, and thanks for hosting this, and to all the young activists at SALO. South Africa is at a crossroads. Do we continue to be prisoner of history, or do we reshape what the future of this country looks like? Do we continue to let the old, corrupted, unaccountable lead us, or do we elect new, accountable, capable leaders who, like in 1994, inspired hope to unify, to bring together a safe, prosperous, and equal country? I think we need to have a serious dialogue about the critical point at this election, but also this period we're in, because it's not just the election. Post the election, the work still must continue. And so I want to part by saying we are at a crossroads. The choice is if we're going to choose the old and maintain the status quo, or do we inject new energy into a system where we can hold people accountable, we can inspire new hope and new change. And that's going to come by electing new leaders, people like us who are at the decision-making table, and stop grandstanding and stop being disingenuous and dishonest about the realities on the ground. The only way we start bridging that divide is by working collaboratively and ensuring that the people of this country is front and center, and we as the leadership are there to represent and fight for the issues that they are concerned about. So with that, leader, thank you so much. Let us go on the 29th of May, regardless of who you're voting for. Encourage everyone you know who's registered to be out there and cast their ballot in the spirit and building of democracy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Efron. Sidi?
Thank you. So I'll probably be really quick to say thank you for the various political parties and the comrades from the various parties for reflecting their views on and their points on how we're going to advance not just democracy in the country, but advance the realization of socioeconomic rights and the different views, whether I agree whether civil society agrees with some of the stances or not. It's still good to know that we have hard-won freedom of political participation, and we should continue to use that to advance these rights. I would also encourage, I'm covered by encouraging everyone to vote, but also encourage political parties and the leaders when moving forward and making these decisions to continue to center or to make sure that you're centering the people of the country in all the decisions and all the politics, and not get lost in the political arguments or whether coalitions work, but always remembering that it is about the people of our country, advancing policy and actions that are by the people and for the people, by the people, and not undermine the intelligence of the voter base in this country, regardless of whether we agree with them or not. And then also just to ensure that, yes, this quite politically contested environment, but we don't fall victim to spreading disinformation and misinformation, and continue to use our platforms for good and for informing our voter base and the people in this country, so that we can really create and shape the future and the country that we envision in our constitution, and maybe even go further than that. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sidi. Tabela?
Thank you, Mr. Sewe. I would like also to take this opportunity to thank you for organizing such a beautiful conversation with young people, and also thank to my colleagues, the panel, to have an engagement, and also to the people that will keep on posing questions. Thank you so much. And it's showing that as South Africans, if we can continue maybe having such dialogues, we're able to even grow ourselves in different perspective. First of all, I would like to maybe to put maybe a suggestion in Mr. Spalane's statement, saying that, okay, we cannot stop people from outside maybe coming with different skills in our country. Yes, we cannot, but as a GA, we are standing, let them be documented. And I said, they'll have something that's saying that, okay, I'm going to South Africa to perform the service skills because they're real, rather than to come in South Africa without maybe knowing some of that. But I fully understand that whenever we do definitely need some skills from others countries also to able to make South Africa to function well. And also to touch on Mr. Ugache and Mr. Ndlovu, like one can done in the national level. Basically, you know, okay, I will first make a statement upon saying we cannot have someone from grade 1 to push to grade 2 while he's failing. Whenever you take a look at the state of the Democratic Alliance, the most municipality that the DA is governing is the most one, even in terms of the good governance in South Africa. That's been given by COPT. Is the municipality that are being run by the DA. I'm going to tell you that there's no party that is perfect in terms of governing. For instance, I cannot maybe saying coming to Mhlatu's and say whenever I'm seeing maybe this sort of issue and saying that the DA is governing this place, why I don't pick up in this paper and say that, and then I will conclude and saying that no, the DA is not doing that. That is not good. But I can want to wish to have some country whereby I can make simple. Western Cape is governing, it's much governing better compared to other provinces. But then have a competition of saying KZN is now competing maybe with the Western Cape, and then we're going to improve. Maybe Free State is competing now with it, so that we can able to have this challenging being multiple. But at the end, what you need to govern whenever the national level, they will keep on doing what they're doing in terms of the Western Cape, creating them job opportunities, because we do have the manifesto in our opinion, which is stating what the game is willing to do, because that is the reality of the thing. We are not perfect. That is the thing. There are places whereby we can say that, oh, the day is doing that, but we cannot able to serve the individual while we still have that power in the national, because we must able to understand that the powers in the national level and also the powers in the local that are not the same. You will find even in municipality that's saying we've got funding that we need to go maybe for the national government, but then if that power is not able to utilize to the local, the budget to utilize to the local level, you can be able to have a failed state in terms of that. So in my closing is that as young people, we really need to be in politics. I will canvas young people to able to get interested, because as young people, we are the future for this country. And we, as our organization, we need to more especially to invest in young people, because if young people they are starting to stay away from their politics, we can have a huge problem in our country to repeat that. Because in terms of even the voting, I even urge young people to able to read, because I'm happy with this platform whenever they're posing this question, because young people, they shouldn't vote for a t-shirt, they shouldn't vote for food parcel, or they should, but they need to vote for what is being offered in terms of that. In my closing word, also again, I'd like to thank again Solo, and able to maybe in future to have such conversation in the future, even after the election. And I'm wishing all the best in terms of the election, young people to able to cast your vote in it and make sure that you give the party that you're able to believe the general. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tabera, and thank you so much to all the speakers today. I know that you're very busy. In the last push, good luck with the elections. I'm just going to quickly hand on to my colleague Foza to do closing remarks, and then that will be the end of the session. Foza, over to you.
Thank you, Busi. So I'd like to thank all of our speakers and our participants and for the insightful and thought-provoking contributions. And we're going into a really interesting phase of our democracy. And so I think your perspectives have really helped provide us with a deeper understanding of the qualities and values that South African youth seek in their leaders, and also what we may be looking forward to if we are going to pursue a coalition government. And so what do we need for inclusive and effective governments, but still relying on constitutional values and democratic principles? And so your contributions have been very interesting, very diverse set of contributions. And so thank you for bringing unique viewpoints to our discussion and enriching our collective knowledge, and highlighting that there's very diverse views amongst our youth population. And so also I'd like to thank you for your commitment, engaging in a very respectful and constructive dialogue. I know we all come from very different political backgrounds and ideologies, so thank you for setting a very positive tone. And I think if you were the ones building the coalition, I think we have a lot of optimism going forward. And just to again express our deep appreciation to our development partner, the Constitutionalism Fund, for the development support. And as Solo, we just again want to reaffirm that we value upholding the Constitution and promoting democracy. And so thank you. So as we leave here, I hope these insights have been valuable in helping us make a decision for next week, Wednesday. So just to echo some of the sentiments and encouraging everybody to go out and vote on the 29th of May. And thank you for your contributions, and good luck to everybody.
Thank you.